So let's give you a little brief overview of where the markets are. Let me bring you into my coaching practice. Now, I'll move through this for you. This is mine. It may not be yours, so I appreciate that, but hopefully it'll show you from my point of view how I've been successful and some of the work that I do. You'll notice that there are 4 frames, and this is standardized in my work. I'll talk about orientation, I'll talk about contacting, the fundamental frameworks, and how I revisit these things. First of all, to be clear with you, this is the model. I am a psychoanalytic, psychological, also literature-based coaching model. So having spent many years in sociology, anthropology, and philosophy and psychology, all of these filter in and integrate into the coaching. I work with a number of people from different countries, different cultural backgrounds. And being an American, I have unique biases that can enable or disable me from working with various people. So the study of anthropology has been a deep and 30-year experience for me, so I can have a better understanding of how to work and work for other people. So the sociological and philosophical orientation is critically important, obviously, because people present with philosophic statements that may not be real. And the psychological and psychoanalytic speaks for itself, and that's where we're going today. So far, so good? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So this model is something that my clients see. This is part of the material that they see so they understand where I'm coming from. But at the same time, what's behind this is there are readings in various places they can go to get more familiar with themselves, as well as the cultures from which they come, and how to apply the work that we do. The first frame in coaching is the orientation. And I will move through this relatively quickly, but these are standard every time I coach. So the coaching space, I'm a John Locke in the 17th century, and there was attributed also to Freud and to Jung, this idea of a tabula rasa, which is a blank slate. I do orient myself to that. And so coaching is a psychodynamic experience. So in that, I want people to have a full psychodynamic expression of why they're here, why they're choosing me, and why they want to have coaching. You'll notice on the program, the orientation for today, I talked about what's called silent coaching. Well, when coaching, the space that I have, people come in and I virtually say nothing. I'll say hello, but they will sit down and they will either start talking and contact me, or at some point I'll ask them, why me? And what do you want from coaching? Silence is my ally in all of this. It enables people to project and speak about what they want. I'm merely there to understand and to watch them fill out this tabula rasa of the coaching experience. The second is an interdisciplinary approach, which you've seen, which I've mentioned in the model. My background is I am a Freudian by trade. So Freud and Hyman Spotnitz are core elements of my own orientation, as well as Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck. You'll notice that these are both, I'll say, psychological and psychoanalytic approaches, but at the same time, philosophic. So Albert Ellis, especially his REBT, is a philosophic solution. You'll notice that it might seem crowded very quickly in that I identify these models as mine. When coaches come to me or coachees come to me, they need over time to understand what my orientation is, because sometimes it is not the right fit. And I'll know that very quickly. If someone wishes to come to me and speak and talk, and that's great, and there's nothing really there, or they want me to do something that I cannot or will not do, I'll refer them or tell them this is not the right match. However, over time, and I'll show you how I do this, over time, it'll be clear my orientation. And the last is the multimodal engagement. People can work with me in a face-to-face room, which I have my own office. They can be in the office and not face me. So the idea of not facing me, They may be in a position where they want to speak and talk and say everything, but they are necessarily uncomfortable speaking to me directly. So they can turn their back to me and speak to me, which is another orientation. And the other is verbal only, where we can do it vis-a-vis what we're doing now, virtually, or another method. But when coachees come into the room and begin to the coaching space, I don't direct them what to do. They will tell me what they want. They will sit, they will stand. That's where the space has to be enabled, where I do not control it. They control it and set both the tone as well what we intend to do. So the coaching space, the interdisciplinary approach, my own method, as well as the multimodal engagement, begins to set the tone in my practice. Second is very clearly is what's called the contact function or contracting. Before we start, Diana is coming in to coach with me, and we say hello, and before we even get into the room, perhaps, these are the things that we go over. That the data collection begins on the initial contact function. As soon as Diana calls me, walks into my office, whatever it is, data collection begins immediately, and that's called the initial contact. I am recording everything in my head. Movement, actions, gestures, everything is being, frankly, assimilated. I focus on what's called the 5W 1H questions. And these are in another frame, these are called object-oriented questions. I will not ask Diana about her. Diana, how are you? What did you have for lunch today? I won't ask those questions. When Diana begins to speak, I'll ask questions about, for example, why should that occur? When did that happen? Who did it go with? How can it happen? I will ask questions that ask around the information that she's speaking about, but I will not address her. I will let her present what she needs to present, and I will begin to fill out what she says by asking what are called object-oriented or 5W1H questions. Why do I do this? Even though it's critical that Diane, being she is the person who's coming for coaching. I do not want to establish a relationship that she does not want to establish necessarily. I'll be speaking, I will not address her as I or you. It'll be, say more. How does that happen? When did it happen? And that will enable her to, frankly, continue to say everything without us, you, me, I, getting in the way and bring attention to who we are. The other part of the data collection is the idea of establishing the frame. I ask, I don't tell. People will ask, coaches will ask me, well, Dr. Williams, what should I do? What should you do? I'm not in the mode of telling. They'll tell themselves. So that's another aspect. So the contract, very simple. The first conversation are fees, the amount, the date, and how to pay me. We're there for a transactional modality as well. Some coaches are a little uncomfortable with this. I absolutely am not uncomfortable with this. So when we meet, how much you're going to pay me, and when we're going to meet, right up front, and that's an agreement that you contract with me too. If you contract that and you don't do it, we may not work again. Critically important. I coach in what are called 4 blocks. When you come to me, you purchase 4 hours at a time. So the 4-block method means that you'll come, you'll have an introductory session, and then 3 other sessions. After 4 sessions, you'll decide if you want to continue. And then we buy 4 more sessions. So in doing it in this way, it doesn't seem like it's forever. It isn't. It gives them complete control over what they wish to do, how often they want to see me, and also from a resource point of view, what they can afford. I have found this 4-session block to be very functional, and it gives people an opportunity to think, come in and come out of my practice. Some people don't like this. I prefer it. And so the conditions and times when and where we meet. The last point of this, 2 last points, is the idea of saying everything. I know that sounds funny. think about it for a minute. If I said to you, tell me everything about your life, could you and would you? We rarely, if ever, say everything. You withhold, we have biases, we don't tell the truth, we do many things. So the idea of saying everything is the foundational engagement practice where I will be quiet and say, well, gee, Diana, why don't you say everything? What? Why don't you say everything about why you're here? What? And all of a sudden, things start to come out that you would never, ever hear. But the idea gives you a very clear understanding of what they're struggling with, but it puts them in the position to always know that what I'm there for is for them to say everything. So I can then begin to do the data gathering and be able to perhaps help them. And the only, frankly, written work or homework, if you will, is I ask them to keep journals that are self-directive, the 5 W1H questions, asking themselves questions, and then self for other dialogues. This is optional. If people don't want to do this, they don't have to do it. If they want to just be with me in a room, they can do that. So the idea of data collection, the contracting function, saying everything, and the self-directed journals is really foundational to meetings with my coachees. Does that make sense so far? We good? Very good. Okay. About 3 more minutes and I'll be done with this. So the third frame of this is, again, a deeper understanding of what the second frame was. This idea of contracting, guidelines, and coaching. I'm now actually attempting to construct the framework or the room in which we work together. And these are some of the foundational elements, which are said in a different way than in the second frame. It's a welcoming silence. I provide an environment that the conscious and the unconscious materials can be presented. You've had people say to you, well, I forgot this, or, I really didn't want to say this, but, or all of a sudden over time, something else begins to come up that wasn't conscious. For folks on the call and other people who don't have a psychological background, that's obviously that can limit this experience. At the same time, because coachees come to you and they are saying many different things many times, it's hard to understand what it is they want. So we take control of that conversation, which is the last thing we should do. What happens is unconscious material begins to be made conscious, and silence tends to do that. They're there in a position saying, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you helping me? What should I say? Why should I help you? That'll come up a little later. But the idea is the silence enables them to say everything. There's a thing called the contact function of the ego, without all the terminology. If they don't speak to me, I don't speak to them. Unless we have 20 minutes of silence, and then I will ask them a 5W1H question like, why is it quiet? Where should we go? Something along those lines to stimulate the environment, but not take them away from what they might be thinking about. My role, I listen, I elicit information, I organize, I frame it. I don't ask, I ask, I don't tell. This idea of saying everything is so powerful. It is so powerful that when you are with people and you ask them, they say, well, I want to learn how to be a better manager. That's great, Diana, that's great. Say everything about that. And things start flying out, they get silent, they pick it up again. They oftentimes don't know what they're talking about. It's the presenting problem that they bring with, and there's multiple layers of that. So that's why the 4 sessions that we talk about, within the first 3, they're still often articulating what they want to try to do. So that's why the contracting can be a little challenging. Or they're telling you what you want, and you realize that's not what they need. But that's a conversation. So saying everything is critical. And this is, again, the examples of the 5 W1H questions that I often use. What should happen? Why should it be? Who could say that? Where should it occur? When should it be realized, and how could it be changed? You are asking them to say everything. By doing so, they will show you what they're attempting to achieve, what their thoughts are, and the transference, you may understand very quickly that what they want is not necessarily what they need, or what they want, they are capable or not capable of achieving. And those are critical guidelines for you to understand as you go into the coaching method, because after 4 sessions, they may say, you're not helping me because you're not telling me what to do. There are times that we do tell them what to do, but not yet. The last frame of this is very simple. With all this framing, I'm attempting to create a self-learning and development loop where they'll begin to talk to themselves and initiate their own thinking and growth with my help. I ask them to reflect. I ask them to reconceptualize as we think, cognitive restructuring, to think about what they're thinking about. I ask them to try it again, to go in and do something with what they've thought, and then review it. Very simple. We all do this in one way or another, but I've formalized it. Saying everything, I'm saying everything, the journaling, etc. So this frame, you can see that it's a self-reinforcing method. So very simply, when you go back to these pieces with this foundation, the data collection, the contracting, saying everything, it's there, it's here, and it's here again. So this, I'm trying to break it down a little more for you, but that is the constant continuum of which I go through. Now, this model down here of the various disciplines, what's important about this is I may refer to read a little bit about that. Consider looking at this video. So little self-help information that they will get. However, by typically say session 3, session 4, the psychodynamic properties of this are starting to come out, and they're asking direct questions like, can you help me do this? And I say, how can I help you do that? Well, and they're not quite sure what to say. You can reinforce me. You can act like my father. Fine. You can be a better leader. They'll begin to tell you who you should be. And that's happened to all of us. And this begins the work of the actual content, which is transference, resistance, and repetition compulsion. So far, so good. I'll stop for a moment if anybody wishes to ask questions, or we can do it at the end. I'll just wait a moment.
So for now, well, we have some questions and some comments. So it's written that thank you for 5W1H questions. So
I would mention that if that's of interest to you, Hyman Spotnitz, who you see on your right-hand side of the screen, he's the father of what's called modern psychoanalysis. Look up, and I can send you an article called Object-Oriented Questions. That's that. Or look up Object-Oriented Questions. It'll make you a lot of money. Okay, let's move. I will move. And thank you for being patient. I put these photos up here because we all see these stern photos of Freud. And I saw this one. It's a watercolor of Freud, I think. It's kind of interesting. I've never saw this before. Hyman Spotnitz is not a household name. You may not know him. However, he is another, I'll say, a different branch of psychoanalysis. It's really, really important to me. So look at this. What is this? Oftentimes when people come in and work with you, is this sort of what the coaching experience looks like? Outside of what all the names are, it's the motion that I want you to be interested in. They start one place, they'll go another place, they'll start over here, they'll go over there. This oftentimes looks like as we get up in the morning before we have a cup of coffee. You know, this is our mind. What are we doing? So the idea is that I have another version of this, which is kind of funny, which I'll put this in front of a coachee and say, where are you in this diagram? and they start laughing. And they say, what do you mean where? I said, where are you? And I've had people spend an hour resisting me and not putting themselves in this diagram. So I will say to them, well, draw another geometry, draw a line, do something and put yourself in a frame. Most people will then stop that and they'll put themselves in this, or they'll draw a straight line or a pyramid. And it's important for me to get a sense of their placement in their world. Some people will put themselves at the top of a pyramid and they'll say, why there? And they'll say, because I'm the boss, because I want to run everything. They'll put themselves in this diagram and say, my life is a complete mess. It's a disaster. And I want you to change it for me. Well, that's not going to happen. So it's a really fun experience. And if you do this in class, if you're teaching a number of coachees, take a diagram like this, put it on a wall. It is absolutely a riot. It's a lot of fun to actually find people where they are and then talk about why they're there. So a fun piece. This is another fun piece for you that I will sometimes do when I'm working with coaches and doing training. This very simple completion exercise is coaching is like a noun. People say coaching is like a freight train because it barrels right through you. Coaching is like walking in the swamp because you keep on sinking. These kinds of things, when being coached, I often feel or think, which leads us to the emotive, really the transference aspect, or the cognitive. So the idea is that this is a place where also you can get very important information right away about how coaching is perceived and how they think or feel without being too invasive. And people typically enjoy talking about this. So for coachees or for training people, I'll use this, and also for coachees as well. It's a good opportunity to get another insight for data gathering and to clarify the presenting problem.